The spring wind carried the scent of hope and fear in equal measure as Hope Lawson stepped off the train in Silver Creek, Montana territory, 1885. Her trembling hands clutched a crumpled letter. The ink faded from countless readings during her journey west. The words had become a prayer and a promise. In need of wife and mother, good home offered, safety guaranteed. It was signed simply, Vincent Valerian, Sundown Ranch. Those 13 words had been enough to make her leave everything behind. Hope adjusted her modest bonnet and smoothed down her travel-worn blue dress as the station bustled around her. At 23, she had already seen enough hardship in Boston to last several lifetimes. After losing her position as a schoolteacher when the headmaster's wandering hands met her firm refusal, options had grown scarce. The advertisement in the newspaper had seemed like divine providence. "Miss Lawson," a deep voice cut through her thoughts. She turned to find herself looking up a considerable distance, up at a tall man with shoulders broad enough to block the afternoon sun. Vincent Valerian stood before her, his expression unreadable beneath a weathered Stetson. His face was tanned and lined from years under the harsh western sun, with a strong jaw partially hidden beneath a neatly trimmed beard. Hope guessed him to be in his early 30s, though life in the West aged men quickly. "Mr. Valerian," she nodded, trying to hide the tremor in her voice. "I believe we have an arrangement." His blue eyes seemed to study her, taking in every detail from her practical shoes to her simply pinned auburn hair. Whatever he saw caused a slight softening around his eyes, though his posture remained stiff. "You're smaller than I expected," he said bluntly. Hope straightened her spine. "I assure you, sir, what I lack in stature, I make up for in determination." For a moment, Vincent's stern expression cracked with what might have been a smile, quickly suppressed. "We'll see about that. Montana winters break the strongest souls." He reached for her single worn trunk. "This all you brought?" "Everything I need," she replied. As Vincent loaded her trunk onto a weathered wagon, Hope caught sight of a small figure partially hidden behind him. A little girl, no more than 5 years old, with a mass of dark curls matching her father's and wide, curious eyes. She wore a simple calico dress, the hem dusty from the ground. "This is Violet," Vincent said, following her gaze. "My daughter." Hope smiled and knelt to the child's level. "Hello, Violet. I'm Hope." The little girl regarded her solemnly. "Pa says you're coming to live with us." "That's right." "Why?" Vincent cleared his throat. "Violet, mind your manners." Hope shook her head. "It's quite all right. Curious minds should be encouraged." She turned back to the child. "Your father advertised for a wife, and I answered. I've come to help take care of your home," and she hesitated. "To be a mother, if you'll have me." Violet's eyes widened. "I never had a mama before." The simple statement pierced Hope's heart. "Well, we shall have to remedy that, shan't we?" As they climbed into the wagon, Vincent's gruff voice broke the moment. "It's a 2-hour ride to the ranch. Weather's holding, but spring storms come quick in these parts." The journey passed mostly in silence. Hope tried not to stare at the vast Montana landscape unfolding before her rolling grasslands, stretching toward distant mountains, so different from Boston's crowded streets. Occasionally, Vincent would point out landmarks or name distant ranches, but otherwise kept to himself. Violet, however, gradually overcame her shyness and began peppering Hope with questions. "Do you know stories?" "Many." "Can you cook pie?" "Apple and cherry are my specialties." "Can you ride a horse?" "Not yet, but I'm eager to learn." With each answer, the child seemed to warm to her, edging closer on the wagon seat until she was practically pressed against Hope's side. Vincent noticed but said nothing, his eyes fixed on the trail ahead. As the wagon crested a hill, Vincent finally spoke. "Sundown Ranch." He nodded toward a cluster of buildings nestled in a valley below. The main house was modest, but solidly built of logs with a stone chimney. A large barn stood nearby, along with several smaller outbuildings. A creek meandered through pastureland where cattle grazed. "It's lovely," Hope said sincerely. Vincent's expression remained impassive. "It's hardscrabble, but it's ours." As they approached, a weathered man with silver-streaked hair emerged from the barn. "That's Ernest," Vincent explained. "Been with the ranch since my father's time. Only hand I keep year-round now." Ernest raised a hand in greeting as the wagon pulled up to the house. His weathered face broke into a smile when he saw Hope. "So you actually came," he said. "Wasn't sure Vince's letter would convince anybody to travel all this way." "I wrote exactly what was needed," Vincent said stiffly. "No more, no less." Ernest chuckled. "That's why I added the part about guaranteed safety and a good home." Hope glanced between the men. "You wrote the advertisement, Mr. Ernest?" "Just Ernest, madam. And yes, this one here would have just written wife wanted, must work hard. Not exactly romantic." Vincent scowled. "We're not discussing romance. This is a practical arrangement." He turned to Hope. "I'll show you the house." The interior of the ranch house was neat but Spartan. A main room combined kitchen and living space with a large stone fireplace. 2 doors led to bedrooms, one for Vincent, one for Violet. A small loft above would serve as Hope's quarters until the wedding. "Wedding's in 2 weeks," Vincent stated. "Pastor Jenkins comes through town then. Until then, your reputation remains intact with you sleeping separate. I respect propriety." Hope nodded, though her stomach tightened at how quickly everything was moving. "I appreciate that. And after we're married?" Vincent's ears reddened slightly. "We'll share the master bedroom. It's expected." Of course it was expected. Hope knew what she was agreeing to when she accepted this arrangement. A mail-order bride understood her duties, household management, child-rearing, and marital obligations. Still, the reality of sharing this stranger's bed made her pulse quicken with both nervousness and an unexpected flutter she couldn't name. "I've had Ernest and some of the neighboring women prepare the house," Vincent continued, clearly uncomfortable with the subject. "Mrs. Peterson from the next ranch brought supplies she thought a woman might need." Hope was touched by the consideration. That was thoughtful. "Folks look after each other out here. Have to." Violet tugged at Hope's skirt. "Want to see my room?" Grateful for the interruption, Hope followed the child. Violet's room was simple but cozy, with a small bed covered by a colorful quilt. "My grandmother made that before she died," Violet explained, pointing to the quilt. "Pa says she would have loved me very much." "I'm certain she would have," Hope said softly. "Will you love me?" The question came so suddenly, so innocently, that Hope felt her eyes fill with tears. "I believe I already do," she answered honestly. The child's open heart was impossible to resist. That night, after a simple supper of beans and cornbread, Hope lay awake in the small loft, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the Montana night. The wind whispered around the eaves, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. The day's events played through her mind in a whirlwind of images: the station, Vincent's stern face, Violet's hopeful eyes, the ranch spreading out before her. What had she gotten herself into? 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, she would be Mrs. Vincent Valerian, wife and mother, bound to this land and these people she barely knew. The thought should have terrified her, yet beneath the anxiety lay a curious seed of something like hope. Perhaps here, in this wild place, she could build something real. Morning arrived with the rooster's crow and the smell of coffee brewing. Hope dressed quickly and descended to find Vincent already preparing breakfast. She paused at the foot of the ladder, surprised. "You cook?" He shrugged. "Had to learn after my wife died. Nothing fancy." "Allow me," Hope offered, moving toward the stove. Vincent stepped aside, watching as she took inventory of the supplies. Flour, eggs, a bit of preserved fruit. Within minutes, she had a batch of hotcakes cooking. "Smells good," Vincent admitted. "Hot cakes!" Violet exclaimed, emerging from her bedroom with sleep-tousled hair. "Pa never makes hot cakes." Vincent's expression softened as he looked at his daughter. Never had the knack for it. As they ate, Hope observed the interaction between father and daughter. Vincent was not demonstrative, but his love for Violet was evident in small gestures, cutting her hotcakes into bite-sized pieces, gently wiping syrup from her chin, the way his eyes constantly checked on her. This was a man who had shouldered the burden of parenthood alone, doing the best he could. "What are your plans today?" Hope asked. "Ernest and I are moving cattle to the north pasture. Spring calving season's keeping us busy." Vincent hesitated. "You'll be all right here with Violet." "Of course. Perhaps she can show me around the house, help me become acquainted with everything." Violet bounced in her seat. "Can I show her the kittens in the barn, Pa? Please." Vincent nodded. "Just don't go beyond the creek. Mountain lion tracks were spotted yesterday over the ridge." After breakfast, Vincent pulled on his coat and hat. At the door, he paused, seeming to struggle with words. "Thank you," he finally said. "For breakfast, and for," he glanced at Violet, "everything else." When he was gone, Hope turned to Violet with a smile. "Now, about those kittens." The next few days established a rhythm. Hope rose early to prepare breakfast, then spent mornings learning the household's routines, while Violet chatted incessantly at her side. Afternoons were for mending, baking, or exploring the immediate surroundings of the ranch. Evenings brought Vincent home, tired and often silent, though he always acknowledged Hope's efforts with a nod or brief word of thanks. On the fourth day, as Hope hung laundry on the line, Violet asked the question that had clearly been brewing. "Are you going to be my forever mama?" The clothespin in Hope's hand stilled. "Well, after your father and I marry, I will be your stepmother, yes," Violet frowned. "But not a real mama?" Hope knelt to meet the child's eyes. "Violet, there are many kinds of real. The woman who gave birth to you, she was your first mother, and nothing changes that. But love makes families too, not just blood. Pa doesn't talk about her much, my real mama." "Perhaps it makes him sad," Violet nodded sagely. "He keeps her picture in his drawer. Sometimes I see him looking at it." That night, as they sat by the fire after Violet had gone to bed, Hope broached the subject. "Violet mentioned her mother today." Vincent's hands stilled on the bridle he was repairing. "What did she say?" "She wanted to know if I would be her forever mama. She also said you keep a picture." Vincent sighed. "Catherine. Her name was Catherine." He set aside the bridle. "Fell ill with fever 3 winters back. Nothing the doctor could do." "I'm sorry." Vincent stared into the flames. "She wasn't from here. City girl from Denver. Her father was a banker who'd loaned money to my father. She came out to visit family friends and we met at a social." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Couldn't believe she'd look twice at a rough rancher like me, but she did. Said she loved the open sky." "She must have been remarkable." "She was, but she wasn't built for this life. Too delicate." His expression darkened. "I should have seen that. Should have known the isolation would wear on her, that the winters would be too harsh." "You cannot blame yourself for illness, Vincent." His eyes met hers, sharp with pain. "Can I? I brought her here, away from doctors, from her family." He stood abruptly. "It's getting late. Good night, Miss Lawson." Hope watched him stride to his bedroom, understanding now the weight he carried. Not just grief, but guilt. He believed he had failed to protect the woman he loved, and now he had sent for another wife, another potential victim of this harsh land. No wonder he kept his distance. He was afraid to care again. The wedding day arrived with clear skies and a gentle breeze. Pastor Jenkins, a traveling minister who served the scattered homesteads and ranches of the territory, arrived mid-morning. Several neighboring families came as well, bearing dishes for a celebratory meal and curious to meet Vincent's mail-order bride. Mrs. Peterson, a kindly woman from the next ranch, helped Hope dress in the best of her modest clothes, a dove-gray dress with a lace collar, her hair arranged simply but prettily. "You'll do just fine," Mrs. Peterson assured her, patting Hope's trembling hands. "Vincent's a good man for all his brooding. Lost his way a bit after Catherine died, but he's steadied himself for Violet's sake." "He rarely speaks to me," Hope confessed. "I'm not sure he even likes me." Mrs. Peterson chuckled. "Men like Vincent don't show their feelings easily. But he wouldn't have sent for a bride if he wasn't ready to try again." She stepped back to admire Hope. "There now. Beautiful." The ceremony itself was brief and straightforward. Standing before the small gathering in the main room of the ranch house, Hope and Vincent exchanged simple vows. When Pastor Jenkins pronounced them man and wife, Vincent hesitated only a moment before leaning down to place a chaste kiss on Hope's lips, their first physical contact beyond a handshake. His lips were warm and surprisingly gentle, gone almost before she could register the sensation. The celebration afterward was livelier than Hope expected. The neighbors had brought fiddles and harmonicas, and soon the furniture was pushed aside for dancing. Hope found herself passed from partner to partner as the community welcomed her, everyone offering advice or good wishes. "You've given this place a shine it hasn't had in years," Ernest told her during a dance. "The flowers on the table, the curtains you put up, small things, but they matter." "Vincent hasn't seemed to notice," Ernest laughed. "Oh, he's noticed all right. Caught him staring at those curtains like they were some kind of miracle. Man's just forgotten how to say what he feels." As the afternoon wore on, Hope found herself watching Vincent with Violet. The child was radiant in a new dress Hope had made from fabric Mrs. Peterson provided, twirling around her father with unbridled joy. For once, Vincent's serious expression had given way to open affection, his laugh ringing out when Violet pulled him into an impromptu dance. Hope felt a pang that wasn't quite jealousy, more like longing. To be part of that circle of love, not just an observer. As if sensing her thoughts, Vincent looked up and caught her gaze. For a moment, something warm passed between them. Then, Violet spotted Hope and ran to her, grabbing her hand. "Dance with us, Mama, dance with us!" The word hung in the air. Mama, so simple, yet so profound. Hope's eyes filled with tears as she allowed herself to be pulled into their circle, the three of them moving together as the fiddles played. Vincent's hand closed over hers, strong and steady, as they swung Violet between them. For the first time, Hope felt like they could become a family. That night, after the guests had departed and Violet was tucked into bed, Hope and Vincent faced the moment they had both been avoiding thinking about. The bedroom, their bedroom, now waited. "I can sleep in the chair," Vincent offered stiffly, not meeting her eyes. Hope summoned her courage. "That isn't necessary. The bed is large enough for both of us." Vincent's gaze finally met hers. "I don't expect... That is, I know this arrangement was made out of necessity, not affection." "I understood the terms when I agreed to come." Hope's voice was steadier than she felt. "I'm your wife now." "Yes, but..." Vincent ran a hand through his hair. "I want you to know that I won't demand anything you're not ready for." The consideration in his words touched her. This stern, taciturn man was trying, in his awkward way, to be gentle with her feelings. "Thank you," she said softly. "I appreciate that more than you know." That first night, they lay side by side, a careful distance between them, both staring at the ceiling. Eventually, Vincent's breathing deepened in sleep, but Hope remained awake, acutely aware of his presence, the weight of him on the mattress, the faint scent of leather and pine that seemed to cling to him, the occasional murmur as he dreamed. This was her husband, a stranger still, yet bound to her by law and vow. Dawn was breaking when Hope finally drifted off, only to be awakened moments later by Violet bursting into the room. "Is it true?" the child demanded, clambering onto the bed. "Are you really my mama now?" Vincent groaned and pulled the pillow over his head. Hope laughed, her awkwardness forgotten as she opened her arms to the little girl. "Yes, sweetheart, I really am." Spring melted into summer, and life at Sundown Ranch found new rhythms. Hope threw herself into creating a home, planting a vegetable garden, preserving food for the coming winter, and teaching Violet her letters. The house transformed under her care curtains at the windows, wildflowers on the table, the smell of fresh bread regularly filling the kitchen. Vincent remained reserved, but Hope began to notice changes. He lingered longer at breakfast, occasionally asking about her day. He brought her wildflowers once, gruffly explaining that he'd seen them while checking fence lines and thought she might like them for the table. Small gestures that spoke volumes. One evening in late June, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold, Vincent surprised her with a question. "Are you happy here?" Hope considered before answering. "I'm finding my place. It's different from anything I've known, but there's beauty in that." She smiled at him. "And Violet makes it impossible to be unhappy for long." Vincent nodded. "She adores you. Talks about her Mama Hope to anyone who'll listen." "And you?" The question slipped out before Hope could reconsider it. "Are you happy with our arrangement?" Vincent's gaze remained fixed on the horizon. "You've been good for Violet, good for the house." He paused. "Good for me too, I suppose." It wasn't a declaration of feeling, but from Vincent, it was significant. "Thank you for giving me a chance," Hope said quietly. "For bringing me here." Vincent finally looked at her, really looked, his blue eyes intense in the fading light. "I wasn't sure you'd stay. City women." He trailed off, the ghost of Catherine hanging between them. "I'm not Catherine," Hope said gently. "My roots don't go very deep in Boston. There's nothing drawing me back there." Something shifted in Vincent's expression. "No family?" "My parents died when I was 16. I made my way as a schoolteacher until—" She hesitated. "Until?" Hope sighed. "Until I refused the headmaster's advances. He dismissed me and made sure no other school would hire me." Vincent's jaw tightened. Man should be horsewhipped. "It led me here," Hope pointed out. "Perhaps it was a blessing in disguise." Vincent studied her for a long moment. "You're a surprising woman, Hope Valerian." The sound of her new name on his lips sent a warmth through her that had nothing to do with the summer evening. Later that night, as they lay in bed, Vincent broke their usual silence. "I was engaged once before Catherine." Hope turned to look at his profile in the darkness. "Oh?" "Daughter of a neighboring rancher. We grew up together, always assumed we'd marry." His voice was low. Then a smooth-talking fellow from San Francisco came through, selling shares in a silver mine, convinced half the county to invest, including her father. "Let me guess there was no silver mine." Vincent nodded. "By the time everyone realized it was a swindle, he was long gone with their money. Her father lost nearly everything. She broke our engagement, went to live with an aunt in Chicago, said she'd had enough of the Montana territory and its broken promises." Hope absorbed this revelation. "So Catherine was your second chance?" "Yes." "And when she died?" He swallowed audibly. "Didn't think there'd be a third." Tentatively, Hope reached across the space between them, her hand finding his. "Life has a way of surprising us." Vincent's fingers closed around hers, and for the first time, they fell asleep, still touching. July brought scorching heat and the cattle drive to summer pastures. Vincent was gone from dawn to dusk, returning exhausted but satisfied with the herd's condition. Hope kept the house running, her confidence growing with each passing day. Violet blossomed under her attention, eagerly absorbing reading lessons and helping with simple chores. It was during this busy time that Hope discovered she was pregnant. The signs had been there for weeks, but with so much to adjust to, she hadn't recognized them for what they were. Now, as she counted back the weeks, she realized the child must have been conceived in the early days of their marriage. The knowledge filled her with a complex mixture of emotions: joy, trepidation, wonder. A baby. Vincent's baby. Evidence that their practical arrangement had become something more, at least physically. But how would Vincent feel? He hadn't planned on more children, at least. He'd never mentioned it. Would he see this as a blessing or another burden in his already demanding life? Hope decided to wait until the cattle drive was complete before telling him. No sense adding to his worries while he was working such long days. The decision was taken from her hands when she fainted while hanging laundry. Ernest found her and helped her inside, his weathered face creased with concern. "You need to tell him, Mrs. Valerian." Hope sipped the water he'd brought her. "I will." when the time is right. Ernest shook his head. Begging your pardon, but there's no right time for such news. Just needs saying. He smiled kindly. He'll be pleased once the shock wears off. Will he? We've barely begun to find our way as husband and wife. Adding a baby so soon. Life doesn't always wait for us to be ready, Ernest said sagely. Sometimes it just happens and we catch up as best we can. That evening, when Vincent returned from the range, Hope asked him to walk with her to the creek. The sun was setting, painting the water gold as it flowed over smooth stones. Hope gathered her courage as they stood side by side. I have something to tell you, she began. Vincent turned to her, his expression curious. What is it? I'm going to have a baby. Your baby. Our baby. The words tumbled out. I believe it will come in winter, perhaps January. Vincent stared at her, his face unreadable. Then, to her astonishment, he sank to his knees before her, pressing his face against her still flat stomach. His shoulders began to shake, and Hope realized with shock that he was crying. Vincent, she whispered, her hands hovering uncertainly before settling on his hair. I never thought, his voice was rough with emotion, after Catherine died, I never imagined I'd have another child. Hope's own eyes filled with tears. Are you pleased? Vincent looked up at her, his face transformed by a joy she'd never seen there before. Pleased? Hope, you've given me a miracle. He rose to his feet and for the first time since their wedding day, took her in his arms and kissed her, not the brief formal kiss of ceremony, but a real kiss, deep and tender. When they broke apart, both breathless, Vincent kept his arms around her. I've been a poor excuse for a husband, too caught up in my own grief and guilt to see what was right in front of me. You've been healing, Hope said. I understand that. Maybe. But you deserved better than understanding. You deserved, he struggled for words, appreciation, affection, his voice dropped, love. The word hung between them, new and fragile and full of possibility. Love takes time, Hope said softly. We're still learning each other. Vincent nodded, then surprised her with a smile that transformed his entire face. A baby, he said wonderingly. Violet will be beside herself. As predicted, Violet was ecstatic at the news, immediately peppering them with questions about the baby's name, gender, and when exactly it would arrive. She took to placing her small hand on Hope's stomach several times a day, whispering messages to her unborn sibling. I'm telling the baby all about being a big sister, she informed Hope seriously, so it won't be scared when it comes out. The summer progressed, hot and golden. As Hope's body changed, so did her relationship with Vincent. The careful distance he had maintained gave way to tentative tenderness. He began seeking her touch, finding reasons to be near her. At night, they no longer slept apart but curled together, his hand often resting protectively over the growing swell of their child. One night, as a thunderstorm raged outside, Vincent confessed his fears. Catherine had a difficult time carrying Violet. The doctor worried for her constantly. Hope placed her hand over his. I'm healthy, Vincent. Strong. I've been working all my life. Still, I worry. This land isn't gentle on women. Perhaps not. But it makes us stronger too. He gazed at her in the dim light. You really believe that, don't you? That the hardship is worth it? I believe that anything truly valuable comes at a cost, Hope said. And what we're building here, our home, our family that's more valuable than anything I could have found in Boston. Vincent's kiss was answer enough. August brought the county fair, and Vincent insisted on taking Hope and Violet, despite Hope's concerns about the long wagon ride and her condition. You need some enjoyment, he said firmly, and Violet should have memories of her mother at such things. Hope's heart swelled at the words. Her mother. Not stepmother or Catherine's replacement, but simply Violet's mother. The fair was a riot of colors, sounds, and smells. Hope found herself enjoying it more than she expected, watching Violet's excitement at the games and displays. Vincent won a blue ribbon for one of his steers, his usually solemn face breaking into a proud grin as he accepted it. As they walked among the stalls, a man's voice called out, "Valerian! Never thought I'd see you at a social gathering again." They turned to find a well-dressed man approaching, his expensive boots gleaming in the sunlight. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes as he looked Vincent up and down. "Hargrove," Vincent acknowledged stiffly. "And this must be the mail-order bride I've heard about." Hargrove turned his attention to Hope, his gaze lingering inappropriately on her figure. "Quite a step down from Catherine, isn't she?" Vincent's hand clenched into a fist, but Hope spoke first. "I don't believe we've been introduced, Mr. Hargrove." "Maxwell Hargrove, madam, owner of the Diamond H, largest cattle operation in the county." He tipped his hat with exaggerated courtesy. "Your husband and I have a complicated history." "He tried to buy my land when Catherine died," Vincent said bluntly. "Offered half what it was worth, said I'd never manage on my own." Hargrove shrugged. "Business is business. The offer stands, Valerian, especially now that you've got another mouth on the way." His gaze flicked to Hope's stomach. "Must be getting crowded in that little cabin of yours." Hope felt Vincent tense beside her. Before he could respond, she slipped her arm through his. "Actually, Mr. Hargrove, we find our home quite spacious for our needs. Love has a way of making even modest dwellings feel palatial." She smiled sweetly. "Now, if you'll excuse us, my husband promised to buy me lemonade." As they walked away, Vincent looked down at her with a mixture of surprise and admiration. "You handled that better than I would have." "Men like that feed on anger," Hope said. "The best response is calm dignity." Vincent's arm tightened around hers. "You're quite something, Hope Valerian." The moment was broken when Violet ran up, her face sticky with candy. "Pa, Mama, come see the puppies!" Later that evening, as they sat on a blanket watching fireworks explode over the fairgrounds, Vincent leaned close to Hope's ear. "I love you," he said simply. Hope turned to him, her heart pounding. "What did you say?" "I love you." His eyes reflected the bursting colors above. "Thought you should know." Hope's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too." Vincent smiled a real smile, open and unguarded. "Good. That's good." Autumn arrived in a blaze of color, the aspens turning golden against the evergreens. Hope's pregnancy progressed well, though her back ached constantly and her ankles swelled by evening. Vincent insisted she rest more, taking over some of her chores despite her protests. "The baby will be here soon enough," he reminded her. "Then neither of us will be getting much rest." They prepared the house for winter, Vincent and Ernest reinforcing walls and adding extra insulation. Hope preserved the last of the garden's bounty, filling the root cellar with jars of vegetables, fruits, and jams. The community pitched in, knowing how difficult travel would be once the snow came. Mrs. Peterson visited regularly, bringing advice and hand-me-downs for the baby. "Every child needs a special blanket," she declared, presenting Hope with a beautifully crafted quilt of blue and yellow squares. "Made this when I heard your news. Gender neutral, since we don't know if it's a boy or girl." "It's perfect," Hope said, running her fingers over the fine stitching. "I'll treasure it always." "How's Violet taking to the idea of a sibling?" Mrs. Peterson asked. Hope smiled. "She's appointed herself guardian and teacher. Already has plans to show the baby the kittens and teach it to count." "And Vincent? He seems different." "He is different," Hope acknowledged. "Or perhaps he's becoming himself again, the self that grief buried." Mrs. Peterson nodded approvingly. "I told you he was a good man." "The best," Hope agreed, her hand resting on her rounded belly. The first snowfall came in late October, earlier than usual. Vincent watched it through the window, his expression troubled. "Hard winter coming," he predicted. "Snow this early isn't a good sign." Hope joined him, slipping her arm around his waist. "We're prepared. The wood pile is stacked higher than the roof, the cellars are full, and the cattle have been moved to the sheltered pastures." Vincent covered her hand with his. "I just want you and the baby safe." "We will be," she assured him. "We have a warm home in each other." What more do we need? November brought heavier snows and the realization that the baby might come before the doctor could reach them. Vincent rode to town to consult with Dr. Miller, returning with books and supplies. The doctor says first babies usually take their time, he reported, but if the passes are blocked when your time comes, Mrs. Peterson has delivered babies before. She's agreed to stay with us for the last few weeks. The arrangement proved fortunate. In early December, a blizzard swept through the valley, burying the ranch in drifts deeper than a man's height. For 3 days, the world outside was nothing but howling white. Inside, the family huddled by the fire, Vincent reading aloud from Violet's books while Hope knitted tiny garments. When the storm cleared, Ernest and Vincent spent days digging paths between the buildings. The snow was so high that Violet could stand on it and touch the eaves of the house. Vincent insisted that Hope remain indoors, fearing she might slip and fall. Christmas approached, and despite the isolation, Hope was determined to make it special. She and Violet created decorations from paper, pine cones, and ribbons saved from Hope's trunk. Vincent and Ernest cut a small tree from the property, setting it up in the corner of the main room. On Christmas Eve, as they hung the handmade ornaments, Violet suddenly turned to Hope with a serious expression. "I have a question, Mama." "What is it, sweetheart?" "When the baby comes, will you still love me the same?" The room went silent, Vincent freezing in place as he hung a carved wooden star on the highest branch. Hope sat down, drawing Violet into her lap as best she could with her swollen belly between them. "Violet, love isn't like water in a cup, where if you pour some out for one person, there's less for others. Love is more like," she searched for the right metaphor, "like the stars in the sky. Each one burns bright on its own, and adding another doesn't dim the rest." Violet considered this. "So your love for me won't get smaller when the baby comes?" "Not one bit," Hope promised. "In fact, it grows every day." "Like the baby grows?" Hope laughed. "Yes, exactly like that." Later, after Violet was asleep and they lay together in the darkened bedroom, Vincent pulled Hope close. "That was a beautiful answer you gave her," he murmured, "about love being like stars." "It's true," Hope said. "My heart has expanded in ways I never imagined since coming here. Loving Violet, loving you, now loving this baby, each love is distinct, yet they all connect." Vincent's hand traced patterns on her belly. "I was afraid to love again," he admitted. "After Catherine, it felt like punishment for bringing her to this harsh place. And now? Now I understand that loving again isn't a betrayal of her memory. It's honoring the capacity for love she helped awaken in me." He kissed Hope's temple. "You've taught me that, you and Violet. That the heart can heal and grow." January arrived with bitter cold, and the knowledge that the baby would come soon. Mrs. Peterson moved into the ranch, bringing her calm competence and practical wisdom. She examined Hope daily, nodding with satisfaction. "Everything's progressing as it should. Baby's in the right position, strong heartbeat." Vincent barely left Hope's side, completing only the most essential chores before hurrying back to the house. His concern was touching, if occasionally smothering. "I'm not made of glass," Hope reminded him as he fussed over the height of her pillow one evening. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time." "I know," he sighed. "But Catherine—" "I'm not Catherine," Hope said firmly. "You must stop expecting the worst." The labor began on a clear, cold night. Stars blazing overhead in the vast Montana sky. Hope woke to the first contraction, a tightening that took her breath away. She touched Vincent's shoulder. "It's time." What followed was a blur of pain and determination. Mrs. Peterson took charge, sending Vincent to boil water and prepare clean linens. Violet was whisked away to Ernest's cabin, despite her protests that she wanted to help the baby come out. Through it all, Hope found strength she didn't know she possessed. When the pain seemed unbearable, she focused on Vincent's face, on the love and fear warring in his eyes as he held her hand. You can do this, he whispered. You're the strongest woman I've ever known. After hours of labor, as dawn broke over the snow-covered mountains, their son was born, red-faced and squalling, with a shock of dark hair like his father's. He's perfect, Mrs. Peterson announced, placing the swaddled infant in Hope's arms. Strong lungs, good color. Hope looked down at the tiny face, overwhelmed by a love so fierce it brought tears to her eyes. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We've been waiting for you." Vincent sat beside them on the bed, his finger gently stroking the baby's cheek. "He's beautiful," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "just like his mother." "What will you name him?" Mrs. Peterson asked as she tidied the room. Hope and Vincent exchanged a look. They had discussed names but hadn't settled on one. "Samuel," Hope said suddenly. "It means asked of God." Vincent nodded. "Samuel Vincent Valerian. A good, strong name." Later, when Violet was allowed to meet her brother, her reaction was everything Hope had hoped for. The little girl approached the bed cautiously, her eyes wide with wonder. "He's so tiny," she whispered, "and red." Hope laughed. "He'll look more normal soon. Would you like to hold him?" Violet nodded solemnly. With Vincent's help, she sat in the rocking chair, arms positioned just so, as Hope carefully placed Samuel in her embrace. "Hello, Samuel," Violet said. "I'm your big sister. I'm going to teach you everything I know." The sight of her children together brought a lump to Hope's throat. This family, this love, it was everything she had never dared to dream of finding when she stepped off that train less than a year ago. Vincent must have been thinking similar thoughts, for he sat beside her on the bed and took her hand. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For answering my advertisement. For taking a chance on a broken man and his daughter. For creating this family when I thought I'd lost the chance forever." Hope squeezed his hand. "Thank you for sending for me. For giving me a home and a purpose when I had neither." They watched as Violet whispered secrets to her baby brother, the winter sun casting a golden glow through the window. Spring returned to Sundown Ranch, the snow retreating to reveal tender green shoots pushing through the soil. Samuel grew quickly, his father's blue eyes taking in the world with increasing curiosity. Violet proved to be an attentive sister, proudly showing him the new kittens in the barn and reading to him from her books, though she was still learning herself. Hope planted an expanded garden, Samuel strapped to her chest as she worked the soil. The rhythms of ranch life now felt natural to her, no longer strange and intimidating, but comforting in their predictability. She had found her place in this wild, beautiful land. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Violet asleep inside and Samuel cradled in Vincent's arms, Hope reflected on the journey that had brought her here. "Do you ever think about how differently our lives might have turned out if Ernest hadn't added those extra words to your advertisement?" she asked. Vincent smiled. "You mean if he hadn't promised safety and a good home?" "Yes, I might never have responded." Vincent considered this, looking down at his sleeping son. "I believe some things are meant to be, regardless of the path. You and I, this family, perhaps we would have found each other somehow." A romantic thought. Coming from such a practical man, Hope teased. "You've changed me," Vincent admitted. "Opened my heart again when I thought it was closed forever." Hope leaned against his shoulder. "And you've given me what I always wanted but never believed I'd find a place to belong, a family to love." "Are you truly happy here?" Vincent asked, echoing the question he had asked nearly a year before. "No regrets about leaving the city behind?" Hope looked out at the land that had become home, the mountains painted gold by the setting sun, the creek flowing with spring meltwater, the ranch house that now held so many memories. "Not one," she said with absolute certainty. "This is where I was meant to be." Vincent shifted Samuel to one arm so he could draw Hope closer with the other. "I love you, Hope Valerian. More than I have words to express." "Words aren't always necessary," Hope replied, leaning up to kiss him as their son slept peacefully between them and the Montana sunset painted the sky with promise. Epilogue. 5 years later. "Mama, Mama, come quick, the new foal's trying to stand up." Hope looked up from kneading bread dough to see Violet, now 10 years old, breathless with excitement in the doorway. Behind her 5-year-old Samuel hopped from foot to foot, eager to return to the barn. "Give me a moment to wash my hands," Hope laughed, wiping flour from her apron. She glanced at the cradle in the corner where 2-year-old Catherine napped, her rosebud mouth slightly open. "Is Pa with the mare?" Hope asked, quickly washing at the basin. "Yes, and he said to hurry because it's the prettiest foal he's ever seen," Samuel reported importantly. Hope checked that Catherine was settled before following her older children to the barn, where Vincent knelt beside a dappled gray mare. Beside the mare, a spindly-legged foal was indeed attempting to stand, wobbling dramatically with each effort. Just in time, Vincent smiled up at her, his face more relaxed and open than it had been when she'd first arrived at Sundown Ranch. The years had etched a few more lines around his eyes, but happiness had softened the stern set of his mouth. Hope knelt beside him, watching as the foal finally managed to balance on its long legs. "She's beautiful," she whispered as the newborn took its first tentative steps toward its mother. "Told you," Samuel said, his expression mirroring his father's. Violet, more patient now that she was older, explained to her brother, "All foals are wobbly at first. Remember when Catherine was learning to walk? It's like that." The mention of their youngest made Hope glance at Vincent. "Speaking of Catherine, she's napping now, but I'll listen for her," Vincent assured her. "You stay and enjoy this with the children." The foal had found its mother's milk, nursing enthusiastically while the mare stood patiently. The sight filled Hope with contentment, the cycle of life continuing, new beginnings always possible. Later, as the family gathered for supper, Ernest joined them as he did most evenings. Now officially retired, but still living in his cabin on the property, he had become like a grandfather to the children. "Mail came today," he announced, producing several letters, including one from Mrs. Peterson. "Says her daughter's family is moving back from Denver, bringing 3 grandchildren with them." Hope smiled. "That's wonderful news. She's been missing them terribly." Vincent nodded. "Good timing, too. We could use more young families in the area." He looked around the table at his own family, Violet helping Catherine with her spoon, Samuel carefully cutting his meat the way his father had taught him, Hope serving everyone before herself. "What are you thinking?" Hope asked, catching his reflective gaze. "Just that I'm a fortunate man," Vincent replied. "More fortunate than I ever deserved to be." "Pa, you always say that," Violet observed. "But Mama says fortune has nothing to do with it. She says love is a choice we make every day." Hope and Vincent exchanged smiles across the table. "Your mama is very wise," Vincent told his daughter. After the children were in bed, Hope and Vincent sat on the porch as they had so many evenings before. The ranch had prospered under their joint care, expanding to include more acreage, more cattle, and a few hired hands during busy seasons. The house had grown too, with Vincent adding rooms as their family expanded. "Do you remember the day we met?" Vincent asked, his arm around her shoulders. "At the train station?" Hope laughed. "You said I was smaller than you expected. And you said what you lacked in stature, you made up for in determination." "I was terrified," Hope admitted, but trying desperately not to show it. Vincent squeezed her shoulders. "I was terrified too, afraid I was making a terrible mistake, bringing another woman to this hard land. And now? Now I know it was the best decision I ever made." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the chirp of crickets and the distant lowing of cattle. Then Vincent spoke again, his voice thoughtful. "Violet asked me something interesting today while we were checking the north fences." "Oh?" "She asked if you were her forever mama now." Vincent's voice caught slightly. "It made me realize something. She doesn't really remember a time before you anymore. You've been her mother for longer than Catherine was." Hope's eyes filled with tears. "I've always tried to honor Catherine's memory, to make sure she knows about her birth mother. I know, and I love you for it. But to Violet, you're simply Mama, not a replacement or a substitute, just her mother." Vincent turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. And you're the only mother Samuel and little Catherine have ever known. You've given my children something I couldn't provide alone. We've given each other what we needed, Hope replied. You gave me a home when I had nowhere to go, a family when I was alone. Vincent kissed her softly. Do you remember what Violet asked you that first day at the station? Hope nodded, her heart full. She asked why I had come, and you said you'd come to be a mother if she'd have you. Vincent's eyes shone with emotion in the fading light. Little did we know then what a perfect mother you would be. Hope leaned against her husband's solid strength, watching the stars appear one by one in the vast Montana sky. Once, she'd compared love to those stars, each one burning bright, distinct yet connected. Now, surrounded by the family they had built together, she knew the metaphor was more apt than she had realized. Their love had begun as a practical arrangement, a mail-order marriage born of necessity. But like the wildflowers that somehow thrived in Montana's harsh climate, it had taken root and blossomed into something beautiful and enduring. And when Violet had asked that fateful question, "Are you my forever mama?" Hope could now answer with absolute certainty, yes, forever and always.